Millionaire thought his affair was a secret until his pregnant wife walked in with a lawyer. "Hi, my beautiful family. May the Almighty shower your homes with endless blessings, filling your days with peace, your hearts with love, and your lives with joy that never fades. May He give patience in trials, strength in weakness, and harmony between husband and wife, so your children grow surrounded by love. Remember, my family, we get this life only once. Be gentle with each other, respect your partner, guide your children with care, and keep your family close. No amount of wealth can replace the warmth of true love and unity in the home. Every story I write is a gift from my heart to you. Please stay with me till the end, because your trust and support keep this family alive. If your heart is true, right, present. If your love is real, right. I am with Mr. Peter." The silk curtains whispered secrets against the morning breeze as Chloe Powell stood at her kitchen window, her hand instinctively cradling the gentle curve of her growing belly, unaware that her husband's betrayal had already shattered the foundation of everything she held sacred. Glenn Smith's Mercedes glided into their circular driveway, just as the first golden rays painted their estate in deceptive perfection. He emerged from the vehicle with practiced casualness, straightening his tie and running fingers through disheveled hair that still carried traces of another woman's perfume. The same hands that had once trembled with reverence when touching his wife now bore the stain of infidelity, yet his face wore the mask of innocence he had perfected over countless deceptions. Chloe turned from the window, her movements graceful despite the precious burden she carried. Her beauty had only deepened with pregnancy, skin luminous with that ethereal glow expectant mothers possessed, dark eyes sparkling with joy and anticipation. She had risen early to prepare Glenn's favorite breakfast, French toast with fresh berries and maple syrup, the kitchen filling with aromas of love and devotion that would soon turn bitter with knowledge. "Good morning, sweetheart," Glenn called out as he entered their home, his voice carrying false warmth that would have fooled anyone except a wife who truly knew her husband's heart. He moved toward Chloe with calculated affection, pressing a kiss to her forehead, while his conscience screamed accusations he refused to acknowledge. Chloe melted into his embrace, breathing in his familiar scent, now tainted with foreign fragrances she couldn't yet identify. "You're home early," she murmured against his chest, feeling the rapid beating of his guilty heart and mistaking it for passion rather than panic. Their kitchen embodied perfection, marble countertops gleaming under pendant lights, fresh flowers arranged in crystal vases, every surface spotless and welcoming. Chloe had designed their entire home with meticulous care, creating a sanctuary where love could flourish and dreams could take root. The irony wasn't lost on the universe that such beauty harbored such ugliness. Glenn forced himself to smile as Chloe placed the breakfast before him, her movements tender and caring. She settled across from him, her own plate barely touched as excitement bubbled from her lips. "I've been thinking about nursery colors all night," she began, her voice musical with happiness. "Something gender-neutral, since we want to be surprised but warm and inviting. Maybe sage green with cream accents." Each word stabbed at Glenn's conscience like shards of broken glass. He nodded mechanically, making appropriate sounds of interest, while his mind remained trapped in memories of Haley David's apartment, her pale skin against dark sheets, her whispered promises of a future that felt more appealing than the responsibility sitting across from him. Chloe's interior design business had flourished beyond their wildest expectations. Wealthy clients sought her vision for their homes, drawn to her ability to create spaces that told stories of love and legacy. She had put her career on gentle pause to focus on their growing family, another sacrifice Glenn barely acknowledged in his selfish pursuit of forbidden pleasures. "Mrs. Henderson called yesterday," Chloe continued, cutting delicate bites of toast while her free hand rested protectively on her bump. "She wants me to redesign their entire estate once the baby arrives. Can you imagine? 3 stories, guest houses, the works. It could set us up beautifully for our little one's future. Glenn's real estate empire had made them wealthy, but Chloe's artistic talents had given them social standing and respect. She moved through their community like royalty, beloved for her genuine kindness and admired for her professional achievements. The thought of losing such a woman should have terrified Glenn, yet his addiction to novelty had numbed him to Blessing's value. The conversation flowed around mundane topics, grocery lists, dinner plans, upcoming appointments, while undercurrents of deception poisoned every exchange. Glenn's phone buzzed insistently against the marble counter, messages from Haley demanding attention he couldn't give while maintaining his charade. Chloe noticed his distraction, the way his eyes kept drifting to the device, fingers twitching with barely restrained desire to respond. "Busy day ahead?" she asked with genuine concern, always supportive of his professional demands despite feeling increasingly disconnected from the man she had married. "Always something," Glenn replied vaguely, his mind calculating how quickly he could escape to return Haley's calls. The young marketing director had become increasingly possessive, threatening to expose their relationship if he didn't commit to leaving his wife. Such complications felt manageable when viewed through the lens of immediate gratification, but sitting across from pregnant Chloe made reality feel suffocating. Their breakfast ritual concluded with Glenn's hurried departure, claiming early meetings that existed only in his imagination. He kissed Chloe goodbye with lips that had spoken lies to another woman, promising to return for dinner while already planning another rendezvous. Alone in their beautiful kitchen, Chloe began clearing dishes while humming softly to the child growing within her. She paused at Glenn's abandoned plate, noticing he had barely touched the meal she had prepared with such love. Worry creased her brow as she considered his recent changes, distant behavior, distracted conversations, a coldness where warmth once flourished. Walking through their home felt like touring a museum of happier times. Wedding photos lined hallways, capturing moments when Glenn's adoration had been genuine and complete. Their master bedroom still held traces of morning intimacy, rumpled sheets telling stories of passion that had grown increasingly rare and mechanical. Chloe settled into the nursery they had begun preparing together, Glenn's enthusiasm initially matching her own before gradually fading into polite compliance. The empty room awaited transformation, walls yearning for color and furniture eager to welcome tiny hands and sleepy sighs. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling movement that reminded her why sacrifice felt worthwhile. Later that morning, while organizing Glenn's home office to prepare tax documents, Chloe discovered the first concrete evidence of his betrayal. Tucked beneath business papers lay a credit card statement she had never seen, showing charges at restaurants she had never visited, hotels where she had never stayed, jewelry purchases she had never received. Her heart hammered against ribs, suddenly too tight for breathing, as she studied each line item, dates corresponding with Glenn's claimed business trips, amounts suggesting romantic evenings with someone who wasn't his pregnant wife. The elegant script of her name on their joint accounts mocked her from letterheads, while evidence of his infidelity burned her fingertips. Chloe sank into Glenn's leather chair, surrounded by the trappings of his success while confronting the destruction of their marriage. The baby kicked as if sensing her distress, tiny movements reminding her that she carried more than her own future in her hands. The perfect life they had built together began crumbling like sandcastles before incoming tides, leaving her to decide whether to save what remained or let the waves wash everything clean. Glenn's cologne lingered in the office air, a scent that had once comforted her during stressful periods, but now felt like evidence of his lies. Every familiar object in the room took on sinister significance as Chloe realized how little she truly knew about the man she had married and trusted completely. The discovery felt like awakening from beautiful dream into nightmare reality, forcing her to question every assumption about their relationship while grieving the loss of innocence that could never be recovered. Their perfect marriage had been performance art, Glenn's devotion carefully choreographed to hide selfishness that would eventually destroy everything they had built together. Standing at their window overlooking gardens they had planted together, Chloe watched morning transform into afternoon, while her world shifted fundamentally beneath her feet. The baby moved restlessly, responding to stress hormones that proved even unborn children could sense when their parents' foundation cracked. The investigation would begin that very afternoon, Chloe's decision crystallizing into action that would either confirm her worst fears or restore her faith in the man she had married. Either way, truth would replace uncertainty, giving her solid ground upon which to build whatever future awaited her and her child. Glenn's office door closed behind her with finality that felt symbolic, sealing away innocence and naive trust, while opening pathways toward knowledge that would be painful but necessary. The woman who emerged from that room was different from the one who had entered, transformation beginning even before truth was fully revealed. The baby stirred within her womb as if sensing the approaching storm, tiny movements providing strength and purpose that would sustain Chloe through whatever revelations lay ahead. She pressed her palm against the growing life, silently promising protection and justice that would ensure her child's future remained bright, despite the darkness that had infected their foundation. Outside their window, the world continued its oblivious rotation, while inside their beautiful home, a woman's heart began the painful process of transformation from trusting wife to strategic survivor. The elegant rooms that had once sheltered their happiness now witnessed the birth of something harder and more resilient, a mother's determination to protect her child from the consequences of her husband's selfish choices. Glenn's betrayal had awakened something fierce within Chloe's spirit, maternal instincts combining with righteous anger to create strength she had never known she possessed. The baby would be born into truth rather than lies, raised by a woman who had learned to value her own worth above the comfort of beautiful illusions. Evening shadows stretched across their property as Chloe made her decision with the finality of someone choosing survival over comfort, justice over peace, and her child's future over her husband's reputation. The investigation would begin immediately. Truth would be uncovered systematically, and Glenn Smith would discover that betraying Chloe Powell had been the greatest mistake of his privileged life. The nursery awaited completion, but now it would be decorated by a single mother determined to create beauty and security through her own strength rather than depending on a man who had proven himself unworthy of trust. Their child would inherit Chloe's resilience and integrity, protected from ever learning that love could be weaponized against the innocent. Chapter 2. Seeds of Doubt. Intuition speaks in whispers before it roars, and Chloe's soul had begun to hear the first soft warnings that her perfect world was built upon lies as delicate as morning frost. The credit card statement lay hidden beneath a stack of design magazines, its damning evidence burning through her consciousness like acid through silk. Chloe had spent the entire night studying every charge, memorizing dates that aligned with Glenn's supposed business trips, recognizing patterns that painted a portrait of systematic deception. Her pregnancy had heightened every sense, including the one that detected betrayal lurking in shadows she had previously ignored. Glenn's behavior that morning confirmed her growing suspicions. He moved through their home like a stranger wearing her husband's face, checking his phone with an urgency that made her stomach clench with dread. The easy intimacy they had shared for countless mornings felt forced now, his kisses landing like obligations rather than expressions of love. "You seem distracted lately," Chloe ventured during their morning coffee, watching his face carefully for tells she had learned to read over their marriage. His eyes flickered with something that might have been guilt before he masked it with professional concern. "Just work pressures," Glenn replied automatically, the same excuse he had used increasingly often. His real estate firm had been thriving, making his claims of stress seem hollow when success should have brought satisfaction rather than anxiety. Chloe nodded with false acceptance while her mind catalogued every inconsistency. Glenn's phone had become his most precious possession, never leaving his side, protected with passwords he claimed were for business security. The device that had once held their shared photos and intimate messages now felt like a fortress wall between them. Michael, Glenn's business partner, arrived that afternoon for their weekly strategy meeting, his usual warmth replaced by uncomfortable awkwardness around Chloe. She served refreshments in Glenn's office, noting how Michael avoided eye contact and ended conversations abruptly when she entered rooms. His wife, Jessica, had been Chloe's closest friend since college, making his obvious discomfort particularly troubling. "How are the new marketing campaigns performing?" Chloe asked innocently, knowing Glenn's firm had recently hired a marketing director whose innovations had supposedly revolutionized their client presentations. Michael's face flushed crimson as he stammered vague responses about demographic targeting and social media engagement. Glenn intervened quickly, dismissing Chloe with false charm while his eyes flashed warning signals to his partner. The interaction left Chloe certain that Michael possessed knowledge about Glenn's activities that made him uncomfortable in her presence. Later that evening, Jessica called for their weekly check-in, her voice carrying forced cheerfulness that immediately aroused Chloe's suspicions. They had shared everything for over a decade, supporting each other through career challenges, family dramas, and personal triumphs. Jessica's sudden reluctance to discuss her husband's work felt like another piece of evidence in Chloe's growing case. "Michael seems stressed lately," Chloe probed gently, testing whether Jessica possessed information she was reluctant to share. The pause on the line stretched too long before Jessica responded with overly casual dismissal. "You know how men get about business. They create problems where none exist." Her laugh sounded hollow, carrying undertones of knowledge she couldn't or wouldn't reveal to her best friend. Chloe's pregnancy had made her more emotionally sensitive, but it had also sharpened her analytical abilities. She found herself studying Glenn's schedule with forensic precision, noting discrepancies between his claimed appointments and actual availability. His secretary confirmed meetings that never appeared on his personal calendar, while dinner reservations surfaced at restaurants he claimed never to have visited. The baby's movements had become more pronounced, creating moments of pure joy that made Glenn's betrayal feel even more devastating. Chloe would place his hand on her belly to feel their child's kicks, watching his face for genuine emotion beneath the careful facade he maintained. Sometimes she caught glimpses of the man she had married, expressions of wonder and love that made his deception feel like losing two people instead of one. Glenn's laptop remained in their home office, protected by passwords, but sometimes left running while he rushed to answer urgent phone calls. Chloe resisted the temptation to snoop directly, maintaining her moral high ground while gathering evidence through observation rather than invasion. Her business training had taught her patience and strategy, skills that proved invaluable in uncovering truth without compromising her integrity. The jewelry discovery came accidentally while organizing their shared closet. A small velvet box had fallen behind Glenn's shoe rack, its contents revealing an exquisite diamond bracelet she had never seen. The receipt, tucked inside, showed a purchase date corresponding with their wedding anniversary, yet she had received pearl earrings that night, not diamonds. The bracelet was beautiful, but not her style, clearly chosen for someone with different tastes and preferences. Confronting Glenn directly would have been the traditional approach, but Chloe's business acumen suggested gathering comprehensive evidence before revealing her knowledge. She photographed the receipt and bracelet, returning everything to its hiding place while her heart broke over his careful deception. The gift meant for another woman felt like a physical blow to her already fragile emotional state. Sleep became elusive as Chloe's mind raced through possibilities and explanations, each more painful than the last. Glenn lay beside her, occasionally reaching out in sleep to touch her belly with unconscious tenderness that made forgiveness seem possible until morning brought fresh evidence of his duplicity. The private investigator's business card came from an unexpected source. While waiting for her prenatal appointment, Chloe overheard another patient discussing her divorce proceedings with clinical detachment that suggested hard-won experience. The woman, elegant despite obvious emotional exhaustion, noticed Chloe's interest and quietly slipped her a card with sympathetic understanding. "Sometimes we need proof for ourselves more than for anyone else," the stranger said softly, her eyes holding wisdom that came from surviving betrayal. "Knowledge gives us power to choose our response rather than simply react to circumstances." Chloe studied the card long after leaving her doctor's office, weighing the decision to hire professional help against her lingering hope that Glenn's behavior had innocent explanations. The baby's strong heartbeat had filled the examination room with promise and possibility, reminding her that she carried responsibility for more than just her own future. Jessica's unexpected visit that evening provided the final motivation Chloe needed to take action. Her best friend arrived with wine she couldn't share and conversation topics that carefully avoided mentioning their husbands. The elephant in the room grew larger with each passing moment, until Chloe couldn't ignore its presence. "If you knew something that would hurt me, would you tell me?" Chloe asked directly, watching Jessica's face crumble with the weight of unwanted knowledge. Jessica's tears provided the answer before words could form, confirming that Chloe's suspicions had foundation in reality rather than pregnancy-induced paranoia. They held each other while truth settled between them like poisonous fog, destroying the last vestiges of Chloe's hope that her perfect marriage could survive intact. The investigator's phone number felt like salvation and damnation simultaneously as Chloe prepared to transform from trusting wife into strategic adversary. Her decision to seek professional help marked the point of no return, acknowledging that her marriage was beyond saving while her future required protection that only truth could provide. Glenn's return that evening brought fresh lies about client meetings and business obligations, his deception so smooth that Chloe marveled at his ability to maintain normalcy while living a completely separate life. She listened to his fabricated stories with new understanding, recognizing manipulation techniques that had once passed for consideration and care. The baby kicked against her ribs, as if offering encouragement for the difficult journey ahead, tiny movements providing strength and purpose that would sustain her through whatever revelations awaited. She pressed her palm against the growing life, silently promising protection and justice. Their evening routine proceeded with artificial normalcy, Glenn's performance of devoted husband becoming more obvious now that Chloe knew to look for cracks in his facade. He asked about her doctor's appointment with manufactured interest, inquired about the nursery progress with forced enthusiasm, and discussed their weekend plans while already knowing he would spend them with his mistress. Chloe played her part perfectly, the loving wife grateful for her husband's attention while secretly documenting every lie for future reference. She had become a detective in her own home, gathering intelligence that would soon transform suspicion into undeniable proof of Glenn's betrayal. The baby moved constantly now, responding to Chloe's elevated stress levels with activity that reminded her constantly of the innocent life depending on her strength and wisdom. Each kick felt like encouragement to continue seeking truth, regardless of how much pain that knowledge might bring. Glenn's phone buzzed throughout dinner, messages he claimed were from demanding clients requiring immediate attention. Chloe watched him type responses with the intensity of someone whose secret communications required careful management, his fingers moving across the screen with familiarity that suggested frequent practice. "Work never stops, does it?" Chloe observed mildly, testing whether Glenn would acknowledge the impossibility of legitimate business requiring such constant attention during family time. Success demands sacrifice, Glenn replied, without looking up from his device, missing the irony that his success was built on sacrificing his family's trust and security for selfish pleasure. The response revealed how completely he had compartmentalized his betrayal, viewing deception as business strategy rather than moral failure. Their home felt different now that Chloe knew to look beyond its beautiful surfaces toward the ugliness hidden beneath carefully maintained appearances. Every room held evidence of Glenn's lies if she knew how to interpret the signs. Receipts hidden in jacket pockets, passwords written on scraps of paper, cologne bottles that didn't match the scents he wore for family occasions. The evening ended with Glenn claiming exhaustion, while Chloe prepared for another sleepless night of analyzing evidence and planning her response to his systematic betrayal. The woman who kissed him goodnight was different from the one who had awakened that morning, transformed by knowledge into someone capable of strategic thinking rather than blind trust. Morning would bring new discoveries and fresh evidence as Chloe began the careful process of building her case against the man she had loved completely. The investigation would provide ammunition for whatever battle lay ahead, truth becoming her weapon against lies that had already done irreparable damage to their marriage and family. Chapter 3. The beautiful love they once had. Love arrives like sunrise, gradual then suddenly overwhelming, and Chloe's first glimpse of Glenn Smith at the Children's Hospital charity auction had illuminated her world with possibilities she had never dared imagine. The memory emerged with crystalline clarity as Chloe sat in their nursery, surrounded by evidence of Glenn's betrayal, yet needing to remember why losing him felt like losing her very soul. The grand ballroom at the Ritz had sparkled with crystal and candlelight. Society's elite gathered to support pediatric cancer research while displaying their wealth like peacocks preening in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Chloe had attended reluctantly, her business partner insisting that networking at such events was essential for their growing interior design firm. She had chosen a midnight blue gown that complemented her complexion perfectly, its elegant simplicity standing out among the ostentatious displays of luxury surrounding her. Her goal had been to make connections and leave early, not to find the love of her life bidding aggressively on an African safari package he would later admit he had no intention of using. Glenn had commanded attention without seeking it, his confidence quiet and magnetic rather than boastful, like the other successful men present. When he approached her table during the silent auction viewing, Chloe's breath had caught at the intensity of his focus, as if she were the only person in a room filled with hundreds of potential distractions. "Are you planning to outbid me on the Tuscany wine tour?" he had asked, with a smile that transformed his handsome face into something extraordinary, eyes crinkling with humor that made her feel immediately comfortable despite their formal surroundings. Their conversation had flowed like vintage wine, smooth and intoxicating, covering everything from their shared passion for supporting children's causes to their different approaches to business success. Glenn spoke about real estate development with genuine enthusiasm rather than mere profit motivation, describing communities he had helped create where families could build lasting memories and legacies. Their first official date had exceeded every romantic fantasy Chloe had secretly harbored throughout her practical young adulthood. Glenn arrived with wildflowers. He had remembered her mentioning a preference over traditional arrangements and had planned an evening that showcased his attentiveness to details she hadn't realized she had shared. Dinner at an intimate French restaurant had been followed by a moonlit walk through the sculpture garden where they had talked until security guards gently reminded them of closing time. Glenn's hand had found hers naturally, their fingers intertwining with the perfect fit that poets wrote about, but she had never experienced personally. When he kissed her goodnight, Chloe felt stars aligning in configurations that spelled out destiny. Their courtship had been a masterpiece of romantic progression, each date building upon the last to create a foundation of shared experiences and deepening intimacy. Glenn introduced her to sailing, teaching her to read wind patterns while she showed him how to see spaces as emotional landscapes waiting for transformation. They discovered mutual passions for cooking together, reading aloud on lazy Sunday mornings, and supporting local charities that helped families in crisis. Weekend adventures became their shared addiction, Glenn planning excursions that challenged them individually while strengthening their bond as a couple. They hiked mountain trails where Chloe learned to trust Glenn's navigation skills while he discovered her unexpected physical endurance and competitive spirit. Beach weekends revealed their complementary natures, Glenn's love of water sports balanced by Chloe's preference for reading in comfortable silence. The proposal had been quintessentially Glenn, thoughtfully planned yet spontaneously executed when the moment felt perfect rather than predetermined. They had returned to the same charity auction where they first met, Chloe assuming their attendance was merely annual tradition rather than carefully orchestrated romance. When Glenn stood during the live auction to bid on a custom engagement ring designed by a local artisan, Chloe thought he was supporting the cause until he turned to face her with the opened box. "Chloe Powell," he had said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom, "you have transformed my house into a home and my life into an adventure worth living. Will you marry me and let me spend forever trying to deserve the love you've shown me?" The ring was perfect. Not the largest diamond present, but designed specifically for her style, incorporating elements they had discussed during visits to art galleries and antique shops. Glenn had listened to every casual comment about her preferences, creating something unique rather than impressive, personal rather than expensive. The wedding had been everything Chloe had dreamed about without realizing she was dreaming. Glenn's vows brought tears to eyes accustomed to remaining dry during emotional moments, his words painting pictures of their future together that made promises feel like prophecies waiting to unfold. When he lifted her veil, his expression held such reverence that guests reported feeling privileged to witness such profound love. Glenn had insisted on writing his own vows rather than using traditional language, crafting words that captured their unique connection while promising devotion that seemed unbreakable in its sincerity. "You are my anchor and my adventure," he had declared before their assembled families. "My peace and my passion, my greatest achievement and my most humbling blessing." Their honeymoon in Tuscany had been pure romance, Glenn's research into her preferences creating an itinerary that felt perfectly tailored to their shared interests. They had explored vineyards where Chloe learned about wine, while Glenn discovered his appreciation for artistic expression through landscape painting. Evenings spent on their villa's terrace, sharing dreams while watching sunset paint the countryside in golden hues, created memories that felt eternal in their beauty. Glenn's devotion during their early marriage had been constant and demonstrative, his romantic gestures continuing well beyond the honeymoon period when many men returned to taking their wives for granted. He left love notes in her design portfolio, surprised her with flowers delivered to client meetings, and planned spontaneous weekend getaways that kept their relationship feeling fresh and exciting. Professional success had enhanced rather than complicated their relationship, both achieving recognition in their respective fields while maintaining support for each other's ambitions. Glenn celebrated Chloe's design awards with genuine pride, attending gallery showings and client parties where he served as her most enthusiastic advocate. The house hunting process had revealed their perfect compatibility, Glenn's practical considerations, balancing Chloe's aesthetic preferences to identify properties that satisfied both their logical and emotional needs. When they found their current estate, both had felt immediate recognition that this space could become their sanctuary, the foundation upon which they would build their family legacy. Glenn had insisted on quality materials and craftsmanship that would last generations, planning for children and grandchildren who would inherit more than just property. "This house will hold our love story," he had declared while reviewing blueprints, his finger tracing the spaces they would fill with laughter and memories. Every room will echo with happiness we haven't even created yet. Their first Christmas as married homeowners had been magical, Glenn surprising Chloe with his hidden culinary talents while she transformed their house into a winter wonderland that reflected her artistic vision. They had established traditions that felt destined to continue through generations: morning gift exchanges in bed, elaborate meals prepared together, evening walks through their snow-covered gardens. Glenn's romantic creativity had never diminished, his expressions of love evolving and deepening rather than becoming routine or obligatory. The surprise he had planned for their anniversary, commissioning a local artist to paint their wedding photograph in oil, had moved Chloe to tears of gratitude for his thoughtfulness in preserving their happiness in permanent form. "I want future generations to see how much I loved you," Glenn had explained when presenting the portrait that now hung in their living room, his eyes holding sincerity that made such declarations feel like sacred vows rather than mere sentiment. Their intimate life had been extraordinary, passion balanced with tenderness, in ways that made physical connection feel like worship rather than mere satisfaction. Glenn approached loving her with reverence that honored her body as temple rather than playground, his touches conveying appreciation that made her feel beautiful in ways no mirror could reflect. Family gatherings had showcased their partnership beautifully, Glenn's pride in Chloe's accomplishments evident to everyone who witnessed their interactions. He would guide conversations toward her recent design projects, his enthusiasm genuine rather than performative, creating opportunities for her to shine while remaining supportive rather than competitive. The miscarriage they had endured together had tested their relationship in ways no prenatal class could have prepared them for, grief affecting them differently while threatening to create distance during their most vulnerable period. Glenn had researched pregnancy loss extensively, learning that men and women process such trauma through different mechanisms, and had adjusted his support accordingly. "We lost our baby, but we don't have to lose each other," he had said during her darkest moments, his wisdom and patience creating safe space for her to experience grief without judgment or timelines. His strength during that period had bonded them more deeply than happiness ever could, shared suffering creating intimacy that felt unbreakable. Travel had been their shared indulgence, exploring destinations that fed their souls rather than simply providing impressive photographs for social media. Glenn planned trips that combined his love of adventure with her appreciation for cultural immersion, creating itineraries that challenged them individually while strengthening their partnership. The decision to try for another pregnancy had been mutual and joyful, their previous loss making success feel even more precious when it finally arrived. Glenn's reaction to seeing positive test results had been pure elation, spinning Chloe around their kitchen while promising to be the best father their child could possibly have. His excitement about becoming parents had seemed genuine and complete, making his current betrayal feel impossibly cruel. Glenn's protective instincts had emerged gradually, his concern for Chloe's safety and happiness manifesting through thoughtful gestures that felt cherishing rather than controlling. He researched restaurants before making reservations, checked weather forecasts when planning outdoor activities, and insisted on accompanying her to medical appointments from desire to share every aspect of their lives. Their shared dreams had encompassed everything from children who would inherit their combined strengths to grandchildren who would gather in their home for holidays that created lasting traditions. Glenn had spoken of their future with certainty that made planning feel like destiny rather than wishful thinking, his commitment appearing absolute and unshakable. "Growing old with you is the only adventure that truly excites me," he had whispered during their last romantic getaway, his words carrying weight of commitment that seemed unbreakable at the time. Looking at their wedding photograph now, Chloe could see the man she had fallen in love with, smiling back at her with eyes that held no shadows of future betrayal. That Glenn had been real and true, making his transformation into someone capable of systematic deception feel like losing a person to death rather than choice. The beautiful memories would always belong to her, sacred and untouchable, proof that true love had existed even if it hadn't survived temptation's assault on their marriage's foundation. Chapter 4. Love's Golden Memories. Memory has its own architecture, building palaces from precious moments that time cannot demolish, and Chloe found herself wandering through chambers filled with Glenn's love when betrayal made the present too painful to inhabit. The afternoon sun, streaming through their master bedroom windows, illuminated the same walls where Glenn had once written love letters with his fingertips across her skin, tracing promises into her flesh with touches that spoke languages beyond words. Their bed had been a sanctuary where vulnerability became strength and passion became poetry, every night a renewal of vows that seemed unbreakable in darkness. Glenn had possessed an artist's soul despite his businessman's exterior, expressing creativity through romantic gestures that left Chloe breathless with their unexpected beauty. The morning she had awakened to find their entire bedroom filled with white roses, not scattered randomly but arranged in patterns that told the story of their relationship from first meeting through marriage, remained etched in her memory like precious artwork. Every flower represents a moment. I fell more deeply in love with you, he had whispered against her ear, his voice husky with emotion that couldn't be manufactured or performed. I could fill our house daily and never run out of reasons. Their anniversary celebrations had become legendary among their friends, Glenn's creativity in expressing devotion inspiring other husbands to elevate their own romantic efforts. The surprise trip to Paris had been orchestrated with military precision, Glenn coordinating with her business partner to clear her schedule while secretly arranging for their home to be filled with French antiques she had admired during magazine browsing sessions she thought he hadn't noticed. Standing in their Parisian hotel room overlooking the Seine, Chloe had felt like a character in the romance novel she secretly devoured. Glenn's arms wrapped around her while they watched sunrise paint the city in golden hues. He had planned every detail, restaurants that served her favorite foods, museums featuring artists whose work she collected, evening walks through neighborhoods where lovers had strolled for centuries before them. I want to love you in every beautiful city in the world, Glenn had murmured into her hair, his words creating promises that seemed destined for fulfillment rather than destruction. The house they had built together stood as testament to their perfect partnership, Glenn's architectural vision combining seamlessly with Chloe's interior design expertise. They had spent countless evenings sketching modifications and improvements, their different perspectives creating solutions neither could have achieved alone. Glenn insisted on quality materials and craftsmanship that would last generations, planning for children and grandchildren who would inherit more than just property. This house will hold our love story, Glenn had declared while reviewing blueprints, his finger tracing the nursery space they had designed with such hopeful anticipation. Every room will echo with laughter and memories we haven't even made yet. Their kitchen had become the heart of their home, Glenn surprising Chloe with his culinary talents during their first Christmas as newlyweds. He had secretly taken cooking classes to prepare her favorite meal, presenting each course with flourishes that made her laugh until tears of joy streamed down her cheeks. Cooking together became their meditation, chopping vegetables and stirring sauces while sharing dreams and solving problems through the comfortable intimacy of shared tasks. Glenn's father had been a demanding man who showed affection through criticism and achievement expectations, making Glenn's demonstrative love for Chloe particularly precious. He had broken generational patterns of emotional withholding, choosing vulnerability over strength in ways that honored their relationship above masculine stereotypes. When Glenn faced career setbacks early in their marriage, his vulnerability had been overwhelming, but his ability to accept comfort from Chloe revealed depths of trust that made their bond feel unshakable. You taught me that love isn't weakness, He had confessed against her shoulder during a particularly difficult period, his fears soaking through her dress while she held him through anxiety that words couldn't ease. "You showed me that letting you see my broken places makes them whole again." Their intimate conversations had been treasures that enriched their connection beyond physical attraction or shared interests. Glenn possessed intellectual curiosity that made every discussion an adventure, his questions pushing Chloe to examine her beliefs and expand her perspectives. Late-night talks in their bed had covered everything from philosophical concepts to childhood traumas, creating understanding that felt like soul recognition. Social gatherings had showcased their partnership beautifully, Glenn's pride in Chloe's accomplishments evident to everyone who witnessed their interactions. He would guide conversations toward her recent design projects, his enthusiasm genuine rather than performative, creating opportunities for her to shine while remaining supportive rather than competitive. Other wives often commented on Glenn's devotion, calling Chloe lucky in ways that made her feel grateful rather than entitled. Glenn's romantic gestures hadn't diminished with familiarity, his creativity in expressing love evolving rather than fading as their marriage matured. The surprise he had planned for their third anniversary, commissioning a local artist to paint their wedding photograph in oil, had moved Chloe to tears of gratitude for his thoughtfulness in preserving their happiness in permanent form. "I want future generations to see how much I loved you," Glenn had explained when presenting the portrait that now hung in their living room, his eyes holding sincerity that made such declarations feel like sacred vows. Their physical relationship had been extraordinary, passion tempered with tenderness that made intimacy feel like worship rather than mere satisfaction. Glenn approached loving her with reverence that honored her body as temple rather than playground, his touches conveying appreciation that made her feel beautiful in ways no mirror could reflect. The pregnancy announcement had brought out Glenn's protective instincts in ways that felt cherishing rather than controlling. He researched prenatal nutrition with scientific thoroughness, prepared healthy meals when morning sickness made cooking unbearable, and transformed their home into a pregnancy sanctuary where comfort and safety took precedence over aesthetics. His excitement about becoming a father had seemed to consume him completely, making his current betrayal feel impossibly cruel. Travel memories flooded back as Chloe examined photographs scattered across their dresser, images capturing moments when their love felt strong enough to conquer any obstacle fate might present. Glenn's face in every picture radiated happiness that couldn't be faked, his arms around her possessing her with pride that suggested he knew exactly how fortunate he was to have won her heart. Their shared dreams had been vast and beautiful, encompassing children who would inherit their combined strengths, grandchildren who would gather in their home for holidays, that created traditions lasting through generations, and golden years spent traveling to places they had only imagined visiting together. Glenn had spoken of their future with certainty that made planning feel like destiny rather than wishful thinking. "Growing old with you is the only adventure that truly excites me," he had whispered during their last romantic getaway, his words carrying weight of commitment that seemed unbreakable at the time. The small gestures had been just as precious as grand romantic displays, Glenn's daily demonstrations of love creating foundation stones for their marriage. He would warm her car during winter mornings, leave coffee brewing before she awakened, and record television shows she mentioned wanting to watch but always forgot. His attention to detail in caring for her happiness had made every day feel like evidence of his devotion. Glenn's support during her most challenging professional periods had been unwavering, his belief in her abilities providing strength when her own confidence wavered. When difficult clients threatened to destroy her reputation, Glenn had rallied their social circle to defend her integrity. When economic downturns affected her business, he had quietly arranged referrals that kept her financially stable without making her feel dependent or indebted. The way Glenn looked at her had been perhaps the most precious gift of all, his eyes holding admiration that made her feel like the most beautiful woman alive, regardless of circumstances. Whether she was dressed for elegant evenings or worn down by illness, Glenn's gaze had held constant appreciation that communicated love beyond words. Their weekend mornings had been sacred time, neither rushing to obligations while they lingered in bed sharing coffee and quiet conversation. Glenn would read newspaper articles aloud that he thought would interest her, while Chloe would sketch design ideas that popped into her mind during their comfortable silences. Glenn's thoughtfulness had extended to remembering every significant date in their relationship, surprising Chloe with small celebrations that honored their history together. The anniversary of their first kiss, the date they moved into their house, the day they learned about their pregnancy, all had been marked with flowers or handwritten notes that proved he treasured their shared journey. Looking at their life together through the lens of Glenn's current betrayal, Chloe felt like an archaeologist discovering that precious artifacts were forgeries, beautiful but ultimately worthless because their authenticity couldn't be trusted. The man who had created these golden memories must have existed at some point, making his transformation into someone capable of systematic deception feel like witnessing the death of someone she had loved completely. Yet the memories remained real, even if the man who had created them had proven false, testament to love that had existed regardless of its tragic ending. These golden moments would always belong to her, sacred and untouchable, proof that she had been worthy of devotion even if Glenn had ultimately chosen to betray the very love he had once proclaimed sacred. Chapter 5. The Truth Unveiled. Truth arrives like winter storms, sudden, devastating, and impossible to ignore once it begins its merciless assault on the landscapes we believed were permanent and safe. The manila envelope felt heavier than its contents should have warranted as Chloe sat in her car outside the private investigator's office, her hands trembling with the knowledge that opening it would transform suspicion into undeniable reality. Detective Morrison had been professional but compassionate during their consultation, his experienced eyes recognizing the pain of a woman about to discover that her perfect marriage was built on foundations of systematic deception. Inside the envelope, photographs told stories that shattered Chloe's world with each devastating image. Glenn's face, radiating happiness she hadn't seen directed toward her in recent memory, gazed adoringly at a young woman whose beauty was undeniable, but whose presence in her husband's arms felt like physical violence against Chloe's heart. The woman was everything Chloe wasn't, blonde where she was brunette, petite where she was statuesque, young where she was experienced. Haley David. The name attached to the investigation report felt like poison on Chloe's lips as she studied the woman who had stolen her husband's affection and loyalty. Marketing director at Glenn's firm, recently relocated from Chicago, unmarried and ambitious. The clinical details couldn't capture the intimacy evident in every photograph, Glenn's body language screaming devotion that belonged to his pregnant wife. The timeline Morrison had constructed was methodically thorough, documenting Glenn's betrayal with the precision of a surgeon dissecting diseased tissue. The affair had commenced shortly before Chloe's pregnancy, meaning Glenn had been deceiving her during their most hopeful and vulnerable period. Every romantic dinner, every weekend getaway, every passionate encounter between Glenn and his mistress had occurred while Chloe planned nurseries and dreamed of their growing family. Hotel receipts painted pictures of luxury and romance that Glenn rarely provided his wife anymore, expensive restaurants where he had wined and dined his young lover while claiming work obligations kept him from home. The Grand Marriott, the Ritz-Carlton, boutique establishments where privacy could be purchased and secrets could flourish without witnesses who might report back to unsuspecting wives. Credit card statements revealed a parallel financial life that Glenn had hidden with careful precision. separate accounts funding his double existence, while Chloe managed their household expenses with the diligence of someone unaware that family resources were being diverted toward adultery. Jewelry purchases, designer clothing, weekend trips to romantic destinations, all evidence of a relationship being cultivated with the same attention Glenn had once lavished on courting his future bride. The photographs were arranged chronologically, showing the progression of Glenn and Hailey's relationship from professional courtesy through obvious attraction to complete emotional and physical intimacy. Early images captured stolen glances and accidental touches that suggested mutual interest developing despite professional boundaries. Later shots documented deliberate meetings, carefully orchestrated encounters that proved premeditation rather than spontaneous passion. One photograph nearly destroyed Chloe's composure completely. Glenn and Hailey standing on a hotel balcony overlooking the ocean, his arms wrapped around her from behind, while she leaned into his embrace with complete trust and contentment. The image had been captured during a weekend when Glenn claimed urgent business meetings prevented him from accompanying Chloe to her prenatal appointment, the first time she had heard their baby's heartbeat alone. Morrison's report included transcripts of conversations overheard in public spaces, Glenn's voice declaring love for Hailey that he had stopped expressing to his pregnant wife. "You're everything I never knew I needed," Glenn had told his mistress during lunch at an upscale bistro. "Being with you makes me feel alive in ways I had forgotten were possible." The investigator had also documented Glenn's criticism of his marriage during intimate conversations with Hailey, complaints about Chloe's pregnancy symptoms, disparaging comments about feeling trapped by impending fatherhood, cruel observations about his wife's changing body that felt like daggers through Chloe's heart. The man in those transcripts bore no resemblance to the devoted husband who had once worshipped her pregnant form as sacred temple of their love. Professional photographs showed Glenn and Hailey at business functions where they maintained careful distance for appearances, while their body language screamed intimacy to anyone trained in reading human behavior. Glenn's hand would rest on Hailey's lower back possessively. Their eyes would meet across crowded rooms with communication that excluded everyone else. Their smiles would carry private jokes that created exclusivity amid public settings. The surveillance had captured Glenn entering Hailey's apartment at various times, sometimes staying overnight, while Chloe believed he was traveling for business. The building's security cameras had recorded their public displays of affection in elevators and parking garages, kisses and caresses that should have belonged to the woman carrying his child, but were instead lavished on someone young enough to be his daughter. Financial records revealed that Glenn had been planning for a future that didn't include his pregnant wife, moving assets into accounts that would be difficult to trace during divorce proceedings. He had consulted with lawyers specializing in marital dissolution, researching his options for abandoning his family while protecting his wealth. The preparation suggested that Glenn viewed his marriage as temporary inconvenience rather than sacred commitment. Text message transcripts between Glenn and Hailey revealed intimate communications that felt like reading love letters written by a stranger wearing her husband's name. Glenn expressed passion and devotion through written words that had once been reserved for Chloe, poetry and promises that made his current emotional distance feel like deliberate cruelty rather than natural evolution. "I dream about the day we don't have to hide," Glenn had written to his mistress, "when we can be together openly without pretending that what we have isn't real. You are my future, my happiness, my everything." The investigation had uncovered Hailey's pressure tactics as well, her demands that Glenn leave his pregnant wife becoming increasingly urgent and threatening. She had given ultimatums about exposure, threatened to reveal their relationship to Chloe directly if Glenn didn't commit to divorce proceedings immediately. The young woman's impatience with secrecy suggested she believed Glenn's promises about choosing her over his family. Morrison had included psychological profiles of both participants in the affair, professional assessments that helped Chloe understand the dynamics driving their relationship. Glenn appeared to be experiencing midlife crisis symptoms, seeking validation from younger conquest while feeling overwhelmed by impending fatherhood responsibilities. Haley demonstrated patterns consistent with women who targeted married men as stepping stones toward financial security and social status. The final photograph in the collection showed Glenn and Haley leaving a luxury apartment complex together, holding hands while walking toward his car with expressions of hopeful anticipation that made Chloe's blood freeze with horror. The implications were too devastating to process immediately. Austin carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to fighting battles for people who couldn't protect themselves. "Mrs. Smith," Austin began, his voice carrying warmth that immediately put Chloe at ease despite her emotional fragility. "Jessica spoke highly of you, though I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Please make yourself comfortable while we discuss how I can help." Chloe settled into the leather chair across from Austin's desk, noting how he maintained eye contact without making her feel scrutinized or judged. The manila envelope containing evidence of Glenn's betrayal felt like burning coals in her lap as she struggled to find words that could adequately convey the destruction of her perfect marriage. "I think my husband is having an affair," she began, her voice barely above a whisper before growing stronger with each word. "Actually, I know he's having an affair. I have proof, but I don't know what to do with it or how to protect myself and my baby from what's coming." Austin's expression shifted subtly, professional concern replacing social pleasantries as he recognized genuine distress beneath Chloe's composed exterior. He leaned forward slightly, his attention focused completely on her words rather than the legal notepad that remained untouched on his desk. "Tell me everything," Austin said simply, the invitation carrying permission to unburden herself without fear of judgment or time constraints. "Start wherever feels comfortable, and don't worry about organizing details perfectly. We'll sort through everything together." The story poured out of Chloe like water through broken dam walls, beginning with subtle changes in Glenn's behavior and building toward the devastating evidence that had shattered her world completely. Austin listened without interruption, occasionally nodding to encourage continuation, but never rushing her through emotional moments that required pause and recovery. As Chloe described discovering the credit card statements, Austin's eyes flickered with professional recognition of tactics he had seen employed by other unfaithful spouses attempting to hide marital misconduct. When she revealed the private investigator's photographs, Austin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, suggesting personal investment that went beyond professional obligation. "May I see the evidence?" Austin asked gently, extending his hand to receive the envelope that had become Chloe's burden and salvation simultaneously. "I need to understand the scope of your husband's deception to advise you properly about protecting your interests and your child's future." Watching Austin review the photographs and documents felt like sharing her wounds with a skilled physician, his reactions carefully controlled but unmistakably human in their recognition of her pain. He studied each image with professional thoroughness, while maintaining respectful distance from the emotional devastation they represented. "This is comprehensive documentation," Austin observed, his tone carrying both admiration for the investigator's work and sympathy for what Chloe had endured while gathering such evidence. "Your husband has been methodical in his deception, but that same methodology works in our favor when building your case." Austin's questions revealed strategic thinking that impressed Chloe with its sophistication and compassionate delivery. He wanted to understand Glenn's business structure, their property ownership arrangements, financial account access, and prenatal care documentation. Each inquiry served multiple purposes, building legal strategy while assessing Chloe's immediate needs for protection and support. "I grew up watching my father destroy my mother through infidelity and abandonment," Austin revealed quietly, his professional mask slipping slightly to show personal motivation behind his career choice. I became a family lawyer to ensure that women like my mother, like you, have advocates who understand that this isn't just about legal technicalities. This is about rebuilding entire lives after betrayal. The admission created connection that transcended attorney-client relationships, Chloe recognizing genuine empathy in Austin's voice that suggested he understood her pain through personal experience rather than professional training. His mother's suffering had shaped his mission to protect families destroyed by selfish choices and systematic deception. Austin explained legal options with clarity that made complex procedures understandable without overwhelming Chloe's already stressed emotional state. Divorce proceedings, asset protection, custody arrangements, spousal support calculations, each topic was presented as strategic choice rather than predetermined outcome, empowering Chloe to participate in decisions affecting her future. Your husband appears to be planning for divorce already, Austin noted while reviewing financial documents that showed Glenn's asset concealment efforts. That suggests he intends to abandon his family, but wants to minimize his financial obligations. We can use his preparation against him, proving premeditation that strengthens your position considerably. The consultation extended well beyond Austin's typical appointment duration, but he showed no signs of rushing toward conclusion as Chloe processed information and asked questions that revealed her intelligence and determination to protect her unborn child. His patience felt like luxury after dealing with Glenn's recent impatience and emotional unavailability. "What kind of timeline are we looking at?" Chloe asked, her hand resting protectively on her growing belly while contemplating the challenges of managing divorce proceedings during pregnancy's final stages. Austin's response revealed consideration for her physical condition as well as legal strategy, suggesting approaches that would minimize stress during pregnancy while maximizing protection for mother and child. His expertise encompassed medical considerations that other attorneys might overlook, recognizing that pregnant clients required specialized handling. "We'll move at whatever pace feels comfortable for you," Austin assured her, his tone carrying commitment that felt like partnership rather than professional service. "The priority is ensuring you and your baby remain healthy and secure while we build the strongest possible case for your future." When their meeting concluded, Austin walked Chloe to the elevator personally rather than delegating such courtesy to support staff. Their conversation continued in the hallway, covering practical concerns about maintaining normal routines while protecting herself from Glenn's potential retaliation if he discovered her legal preparations. "Call me anytime, day or night, if you feel unsafe or need immediate assistance," Austin said, pressing his business card into her hand with contact information that included his personal cell phone number. "You're not alone in this anymore, Chloe. You have an advocate who will fight to ensure you and your child receive everything you deserve." Standing in the elevator as doors closed between them, Chloe felt hope stirring alongside determination for the first time since discovering Glenn's betrayal. Austin Butler represented more than legal expertise. He embodied the possibility that her story could end with justice rather than devastation, that skilled advocacy could transform her from victim into victor. The business card in her purse felt like armor against whatever battles lay ahead, Austin's commitment providing strength that would sustain her through the challenges of confronting Glenn and rebuilding her life from the ashes of their destroyed marriage. His professional excellence combined with personal compassion created the perfect alliance she needed to protect her future and her child's welfare against whatever retaliation Glenn might attempt when he discovered that his pregnant wife had become a formidable adversary armed with truth and guided by expertise that matched his deception with superior strategy. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. Preparation for battle requires patience and precision, and Chloe learned that revenge served cold could be infinitely more satisfying than heated confrontation as she methodically built her case with Austin's expert guidance. The secure storage facility on the outskirts of town became Chloe's secret headquarters, a climate-controlled unit where she assembled evidence of Glenn's betrayal with the thoroughness of a historian documenting civilization's collapse. Austin had recommended creating backup copies of all documentation, storing originals in locations Glenn couldn't access or destroy if he discovered her investigation and responded with desperate measures. Each visit to the storage unit felt like adding ammunition to her arsenal, boxes of financial records and legal documents, creating a fortress of proof that Glenn's lies couldn't penetrate or explain away. Chloe organized everything chronologically, creating timelines that would allow Austin to present their case with devastating efficiency when confrontation became inevitable. Austin's office had become a sanctuary where Chloe could speak freely about her husband's deception without fear of judgment or social repercussions. Their regular meetings had evolved beyond strictly professional consultations into strategic planning sessions where Austin's legal expertise combined with Chloe's intimate knowledge of Glenn's personality and habits to create comprehensive battle plans. "Your husband has been more careless than most unfaithful spouses," Austin observed during one particularly productive session, his analysis of Glenn's financial records revealing patterns of arrogance and entitlement that would serve their purposes beautifully. "He appears to believe his deception is so skillful that he doesn't need to cover his tracks carefully." The asset investigation had uncovered Glenn's attempts to hide community property through complex business arrangements that would fool casual observers but crumbled under professional scrutiny. Austin's forensic accountant had traced hidden accounts, discovered property purchases made without Chloe's knowledge, and calculated the true value of Glenn's business interests that he had systematically undervalued during their marriage. "He's been preparing to divorce you while keeping maximum wealth for himself," Austin explained, his voice carrying anger on Chloe's behalf that felt reassuring rather than unprofessional. "The good news is that his preparation creates evidence of premeditation that will work strongly in your favor during proceedings." Chloe's pregnancy had become both complication and advantage in their strategic planning, her physical condition limiting some options while creating others that could prove decisive during negotiations. Austin had researched precedents involving pregnant wives abandoned by unfaithful husbands, building arguments that would maximize her settlement while ensuring long-term security for their child. The stress of maintaining normal routines while secretly preparing for legal warfare had begun affecting Chloe's health, her blood pressure rising during prenatal appointments in ways that concerned her obstetrician and worried Austin when she reported the developments. He had immediately insisted that she reduce her involvement in evidence gathering, hiring additional professionals to handle tasks that might endanger her pregnancy. "Your health and your baby's well-being take priority over everything else," Austin had declared firmly when Chloe protested the limitations he imposed on her activities. "We can win this case without sacrificing your physical condition or your child's safety. Let me worry about the details while you focus on staying healthy." Austin's protectiveness had evolved beyond professional responsibility into personal investment that created complicated feelings Chloe wasn't ready to examine closely. His concern for her welfare felt genuine and deep, his anger at Glenn's treatment of her carrying emotional weight that suggested involvement beyond attorney-client relationships. During their meetings, Austin would ensure Chloe had comfortable seating and adequate refreshments, adjusting office temperature for her comfort and scheduling appointments around her prenatal care requirements. His consideration for her pregnancy needs felt like kindness she had forgotten existed after dealing with Glenn's recent indifference to her physical condition. The investigation into Haley David had revealed disturbing information about Glenn's mistress that added complexity to their situation. The young woman had a history of relationships with married men, suggesting patterns of behavior that made her dangerous rather than simply misguided. Her demands for Glenn to leave his pregnant wife had become increasingly aggressive, threatening to expose their affair if he didn't commit to divorce proceedings immediately. "She's not just a mistress," Austin had concluded after reviewing Detective Morrison's expanded report on Haley's background. "She's a predator who targets married men for financial gain and social advancement. Your husband may have initiated their relationship, but she's driving it toward its current destructive trajectory." Glenn's behavior at home had become increasingly erratic as pressure from Haley mounted and his double life became more difficult to maintain. He spent longer periods away from home, claimed work emergencies that didn't correspond with his actual business calendar, and responded to Chloe's questions with irritation that bordered on hostility. The pregnancy symptoms that had once evoked Glenn's tender concern now seemed to annoy him. Chloe's morning sickness and physical discomfort treated as personal inconveniences rather than natural consequences of carrying his child. His transformation from devoted husband into resentful stranger felt like watching someone she loved die while wearing his face. "He's compartmentalizing his guilt by blaming you for making him feel trapped," Austin explained when Chloe described Glenn's increasingly cold treatment of her. "It's a common psychological defense mechanism that allows unfaithful spouses to justify their behavior by reframing their victims as obstacles to their happiness." The nursery remained unfinished, Glenn's enthusiasm for preparing their child's room having evaporated as his commitment to their marriage dissolved. Chloe had continued decorating alone, each purchase and arrangement feeling like acts of defiance against Glenn's abandonment of their dreams. The beautiful space represented hope that their baby would experience love and security regardless of her father's failures. Austin had begun accompanying Chloe to some prenatal appointments, his presence as her legal advisor, providing emotional support during medical consultations that should have included her husband. His genuine interest in her baby's development and concern for her health felt like glimpses of the partnership she had lost when Glenn chose deception over devotion. "Your baby is lucky to have such a strong mother," Austin had whispered during one ultrasound appointment, his hand briefly covering hers as they watched their child move on the monitor screen. "Whatever happens with your husband, this little one will grow up knowing they are truly wanted and deeply loved." The comment had brought tears to Chloe's eyes, not just for its kindness, but for the recognition that Austin understood her fears about raising a child alone. His reassurance felt like permission to believe that single motherhood could be triumph rather than tragedy, that her baby's future could be bright despite Glenn's abandonment. Financial preparations had included securing independent bank accounts and credit arrangements that would ensure Chloe's stability during divorce proceedings and beyond. Austin had guided her through creating financial independence that Glenn couldn't sabotage, protecting resources needed for raising their child and rebuilding her life. "Money is power in divorce situations," Austin had explained while reviewing account statements and investment portfolios. "Your husband has been trying to concentrate financial control in his hands, but we're going to ensure you have resources he can't touch or manipulate." The family meeting strategy had emerged during one particularly intense planning session, Austin's suggestion that Chloe confront Glenn publicly rather than privately, creating opportunities for maximum psychological impact while ensuring witness protection against potential retaliation. "Your husband's greatest fear is public exposure of his deception," Austin had observed. "He's worked hard to maintain his reputation as a devoted family man. Destroying that image in front of people whose opinion he values will hit him where he's most vulnerable." Legal documents had been prepared with military precision, divorce papers drafted and ready for filing at a moment's notice, custody arrangements favoring Chloe's maternal rights while protecting the baby's interests, and financial settlements calculated to ensure Glenn would pay heavily for his betrayal. Austin's thoroughness left no detail unconsidered, no contingency unplanned. "We're not just preparing for divorce," Austin had explained during their final strategy session. "We're orchestrating Glenn's complete destruction as punishment for what he's done to you and your child. By the time we're finished, he'll understand that betraying you was the greatest mistake of his life." The transformation in Chloe's confidence had been remarkable to witness. Austin's support and strategic guidance helping her evolve from wounded victim into formidable adversary. She had learned to think tactically rather than emotionally, planning her moves with the patience of a chess master, setting up checkmate against an opponent who didn't realize the game had begun. Glenn's return each evening brought fresh opportunities to gather intelligence about his activities and mindset. Chloe playing the role of devoted wife while secretly documenting every lie for future use against him. She had become an actress in her own life, performance concealing deadly purpose that would soon be revealed with devastating effect. The baby's movements had grown stronger and more frequent, as if sensing the approaching confrontation and offering encouragement for the battle ahead. Each kick felt like reminder of what Chloe was fighting for, not just her own dignity and financial security, but her child's right to grow up protected from the consequences of Glenn's selfish choices. As they finalized plans for the family meeting that would end her marriage and begin her new life, Chloe felt transformation from victim into warrior, Austin's expertise and support providing weapons she needed to fight for justice and her child's future. The storm was gathering strength, ready to unleash fury that would wash away Glenn's lies and leave only truth standing in its wake. Chapter 8. The Masterstroke. Timing in warfare determines victory or defeat, and Chloe chose her moment with the precision of a chess grandmaster moving pieces into position for checkmate that would be swift, decisive, and absolutely devastating. The invitations had been crafted with deceptive innocence, Chloe's elegant handwriting flowing across cream-colored cardstock as she requested the pleasure of Glenn's family's company for an important celebration regarding our growing family's future. The wording suggested joyful announcements rather than explosive revelations, ensuring maximum attendance from relatives who would serve as witnesses to Glenn's destruction. Glenn's parents had responded with enthusiasm that made Chloe's heart ache for their coming disillusionment, his mother calling to offer assistance with party preparations while expressing delight about potential news regarding their grandchild's impending arrival. The entire Smith family had accepted her invitation without question, trusting their beloved daughter-in-law completely while remaining oblivious to their son's betrayal. The dining room had been transformed into a stage worthy of the performance Chloe was about to deliver, fresh flowers creating an atmosphere of celebration, while her best china and crystal glassware suggested special occasion significance. Every detail had been planned with theatrical precision, creating an environment where Glenn's exposed lies would feel even more shocking against the backdrop of domestic perfection. Austin had arrived early to review their strategy one final time, his presence in their home feeling both natural and revolutionary as he stood in spaces where Glenn had once reigned supreme. Dressed in his finest suit with documents organized in leather portfolios, Austin looked every inch the formidable attorney who would soon dismantle Glenn's life with surgical precision. "Remember, let me handle the legal presentation while you focus on the emotional testimony," Austin had coached her during their final preparation session. "Your job is to tell your story with dignity and strength. My job is to prove your husband's guilt with evidence that can't be disputed or explained away." The guests began arriving punctually, Glenn's family members embracing Chloe with genuine affection while commenting on her radiant appearance despite the stress she had endured privately. His parents presented gifts for their unborn grandchild, their generosity and love creating guilt that she would soon destroy their illusions about their son's character. Glenn's sister Jennifer had brought homemade desserts, His brother Christopher offered to help with any household projects before the baby arrived, and various aunts, uncles, and cousins filled their home with laughter and conversation that would soon turn to shocked silence. The warmth and love surrounding Chloe made Glenn's betrayal feel even more criminal in its violation of family bonds. Glenn's arrival created a moment of perfect dramatic irony as he entered their home to find his entire family gathered in celebration of their marriage, while evidence of his adultery waited in Austin's briefcase like a loaded weapon. His disheveled appearance and obvious fatigue from another night with Haley created immediate contrast with the formal occasion Chloe had orchestrated. "What's all this?" Glenn asked with forced cheerfulness, his eyes darting around the assembled crowd, while his mind clearly struggled to remember any occasion that warranted such gathering. The fact that he had forgotten the significance Chloe had hinted at in her invitations proved how completely he had disconnected from their marriage. Chloe moved through the room like a gracious hostess, ensuring everyone had refreshments while maintaining conversation that avoided revealing the true purpose of their gathering. Her performance was flawless, radiant, expectant mother presiding over family celebration while preparing to detonate explosives that would destroy Glenn's reputation forever. "I'm so grateful you could all come," Chloe announced once everyone had settled in their seats, her voice carrying warmth that made Glenn relax slightly as he assumed the evening would proceed without complications. "As you know, Glenn and I have been preparing for our baby's arrival, and there are some important decisions that needed to be made about our family's future." Glenn's expression shifted subtly as he registered something in Chloe's tone that didn't match her words, survival instincts finally activating after countless deceptions. He began studying her face more carefully, searching for clues about the trap he was beginning to sense but couldn't yet identify. "Before we discuss those plans," Chloe continued with practiced grace, "I'd like to introduce someone who has become invaluable in helping us navigate these important decisions. Everyone, please meet Austin Butler, our family attorney." The room fell silent as Austin stepped forward from his position near the kitchen, his imposing presence and professional bearing creating immediate tension that replaced the celebratory atmosphere Glenn's family had anticipated. Glenn's face drained of color as he recognized that his wife had hired legal representation without his knowledge, the implications hitting him like physical blows. "Good evening," Austin said with polished professionalism, his voice carrying authority that commanded respect, while his eyes remained fixed on Glenn with unmistakable challenge. "I appreciate Mrs. Smith's invitation to address you all regarding some matters that require family consideration and support." Glenn's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as he struggled to comprehend the situation unfolding around him, his arrogance and overconfidence crumbling as he realized that Chloe had orchestrated his exposure with strategic brilliance he hadn't credited her with possessing. The family members exchanged confused glances, sensing drama building but unable to predict its direction. "Austin has been helping me understand some complicated legal situations that have developed recently," Chloe explained with deceptive calmness, her hand resting protectively on her belly while her eyes never left Glenn's increasingly panicked face. "Situations that affect not just Glenn and myself, but our entire family's future and reputation." The word reputation hit Glenn like a physical blow, his greatest fear about public exposure becoming reality as he faced the people whose opinion mattered most to him. His parents sat forward in their chairs with growing concern, their son's obvious distress creating alarm that would soon transform into horror. Austin opened his first portfolio with theatrical precision, extracting photographs that would soon destroy everything Glenn valued about his social standing and family relationships. The documents were arranged for maximum psychological impact, building evidence systematically, while Glenn's world crumbled before witnesses who had gathered expecting celebration. Mrs. Smith discovered some concerning financial irregularities and behavioral changes that required professional investigation. Austin began, his voice carrying the weight of impending judgment, while Glenn's family listened with increasing dread. What we found was a pattern of deception that extends far beyond financial impropriety. Glenn finally found his voice, desperation making him attempt damage control that was already too late to be effective. "Chloe, what is this? What are you doing? If you have concerns about something, we should discuss it privately, not air personal matters in front of our families." The plea for privacy fell on deaf ears as Chloe regarded her husband with calm strength that surprised everyone present, including herself. She had transformed from trusting wife into strategic adversary, her pregnancy giving her courage to fight for their child's future, while Glenn's betrayal had killed any desire to protect his feelings or reputation. "I think our families deserve to know the truth about who you really are," Chloe replied with quiet dignity, her voice carrying disappointment that was more devastating than anger would have been. "They've loved and supported you, believing you were an honorable man, a devoted husband and soon-to-be father. They deserve to know how wrong we all were." Austin stepped forward with the first photograph, its contents visible only to Glenn, but its impact immediately apparent as his face crumpled with the recognition that his secret life was about to become public knowledge. The room held its collective breath, sensing that whatever revelation was coming would change everything forever. Glenn's hands trembled as he reached for the photograph. His worst nightmare, materializing as evidence of his betrayal, was presented to the people whose respect he valued most. The image showed him and Haley in passionate embrace, their intimacy undeniable and their betrayal of his pregnant wife obvious to anyone who viewed the damning evidence. "This was taken while your son was supposedly attending a business conference," Austin announced to Glenn's horrified family, his professional tone making the betrayal sound even more clinical and calculated. The same weekend, his pregnant wife attended her prenatal appointment alone for the first time. The stage was set, the audience assembled, and the evidence prepared. Glenn's destruction was about to begin with methodical precision that would leave no doubt about his guilt or opportunity for redemption through denial or manipulation. The baby moved within Chloe's womb as if offering encouragement for the battle ahead, maternal instincts joining forces with righteous anger to create strength she had never known she possessed. Chapter 9. The Reckoning Begins. Hell hath no fury like a woman armed with irrefutable evidence, and Chloe wielded the truth like a sword, forged in betrayal's fire, as she began dismantling Glenn's lies before the people who had believed in his goodness. The first photograph Austin placed on the coffee table created a silence so profound that heartbeats became audible, Glenn's mother's sharp intake of breath cutting through air, thick with anticipation and dread. The image showed Glenn and Haley locked in passionate embrace outside an upscale restaurant, their bodies pressed together with intimacy that left no room for innocent interpretation. "This was taken 3 weeks ago," Chloe announced with clinical precision, her voice steady despite the emotional earthquake she was unleashing upon their family gathering. "While I was at home planning our baby's nursery, my husband was creating memories with another woman at Chez Laurent, the same restaurant where he proposed to me." Glenn's father leaned forward to examine the photograph more closely, his distinguished features hardening, as recognition dawned that his son's infidelity was being documented with devastating clarity. The disappointment in his eyes created visible impact on Glenn, whose relationship with his demanding father had always been complicated by expectations of perfection and success. "That's not what it looks like," Glenn began desperately, his voice cracking under pressure as he attempted damage control that everyone present could see was futile. "Haley is our marketing director, and business relationships sometimes require social interaction that might appear inappropriate but has perfectly innocent explanations." Austin produced the second photograph before Glenn could complete his weak justification. This image showing the couple entering a hotel room with luggage that suggested overnight stays rather than business meetings. Glenn's brother Christopher muttered something profane under his breath, while his wife Jennifer covered her mouth in shock. "Business meetings that require overnight accommodations?" Chloe asked with bitter amusement, her composure remaining intact while Glenn's crumbled visibly. "Business meetings where you purchase jewelry that I never received? Business meetings that occurred during weekends when you told me you were visiting your college roommate?" The jewelry receipts appeared next, Austin's presentation building evidence systematically, while Glenn's family processed each revelation with increasing horror. The diamond bracelet Chloe had discovered hidden in their closet was documented with purchase records showing Glenn's signature and payment from accounts she had never known existed. Glenn's mother began crying softly as she studied receipts for romantic gifts her son had bought for another woman, while his pregnant wife believed he was working to support their growing family. The betrayal felt personal to her as well, her maternal pride in Glenn's character dissolving under overwhelming evidence of his deception. The financial analysis reveals a pattern of systematic concealment, Austin continued professionally, his legal training allowing him to present devastating personal information with courtroom objectivity that somehow made it even more damning. "Your son has been maintaining a separate financial life to fund his extramarital relationship while hiding assets from his pregnant wife." Credit card statements filled the coffee table like evidence in a criminal trial, each document representing another layer of Glenn's lies being peeled away to reveal the calculating betrayal beneath. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, weekend getaways, all documented proof that Glenn had been living a double life with meticulous planning rather than spontaneous passion. "Glenn took his mistress to the Bahamas while I was experiencing complications with my pregnancy," Chloe revealed, her hand resting protectively on her belly while she delivered another devastating blow. "He told me the business conference was too stressful for a pregnant woman to attend, that I should rest at home for the baby's sake." The vacation photographs were particularly damaging, showing Glenn and Haley on pristine beaches where he had once taken his bride for their honeymoon. The deliberate cruelty of recreating romantic memories with another woman while his pregnant wife waited at home created gasps of outrage from family members who were beginning to see their beloved Glenn as a stranger wearing familiar features. Glenn's uncle Michael stood abruptly, his face flushed with anger as he confronted his nephew directly. "How could you do this to Chloe? She's been nothing but devoted to you, and she's carrying your child. What kind of man betrays his family like this?" "You don't understand the pressures I've been under," Glenn replied weakly, his attempts at self-justification sounding pathetic even to his own ears. "Marriage is complicated and sometimes people grow apart, and attractions develop that you can't control, and mistakes happen that don't reflect your true character." Chloe's laugh was sharp and bitter as she processed Glenn's attempt to minimize his systematic betrayal as simple mistakes or natural relationship evolution. "Mistakes?" she repeated incredulously. "Planning secret vacations with another woman is a mistake. Hiding money from your pregnant wife is a mistake. Telling your mistress that you feel trapped by your marriage is a mistake." Austin produced the transcript of Glenn's recorded conversation with Haley at a downtown cafe, the private investigator's surveillance having captured Glenn's own words condemning him more thoroughly than any outside testimony could achieve. The family listened in stunned silence as Glenn's voice expressed complaints about his wife and resentment about impending fatherhood that revealed the depth of his betrayal. "Being with Chloe feels like suffocating sometimes," Glenn's recorded voice played from Austin's device. "She's become so focused on the baby that she doesn't see me anymore. With you, I feel alive and appreciated. You make me remember who I am beyond just husband and father." Glenn's sister Jennifer stood and moved away from her brother as if his presence had become physically repulsive, her disgust evident as she processed his cruel words about the woman who had welcomed her into the family and supported her through difficult times. The solidarity among the women present created visible shift in room dynamics. "Chloe has been planning your child's nursery while you've been planning your escape," Austin observed, his voice carrying moral judgment that was professionally appropriate given the evidence he was presenting. "The business arrangements you've made suggest intention to abandon your family while protecting your wealth from divorce proceedings." The revelation that Glenn had been consulting divorce attorneys while maintaining the facade of devoted husband created another wave of shocked reactions from his family. His father's expression showed particular betrayal, the older man's belief in his son's integrity having been central to their relationship despite its complexities. "You were planning to leave her?" Glenn's mother asked through tears, her voice breaking as she struggled to reconcile the son she had raised with the man whose actions were being systematically exposed. "You were going to abandon your pregnant wife and grandchild for this woman." Glenn's desperate attempts to explain or minimize his behavior only made his situation worse, each word digging his grave deeper as his family recognized lies they had been unconsciously accepting for periods. His claims of love for Chloe rang hollow against evidence of his calculated betrayal, his protests about temporary confusion contradicted by documented planning and premeditation. Haley's ultimatum demands appeared next in Austin's presentation, text messages showing the young woman's pressure for Glenn to leave his pregnant wife immediately or face exposure of their relationship. The messages revealed manipulation and threats that painted Glenn as victim of his mistress's ambitions, but his responses showed willing participation rather than coerced cooperation. "She's threatening to tell you everything if I don't file for divorce," Glenn had texted to Haley, "but I can't abandon Chloe while she's pregnant. Give me time to figure out how to handle this situation without destroying everyone's lives." The irony of Glenn's concern about destroying lives while actively devastating his wife's emotional and financial security wasn't lost on anyone present, his selective morality appearing calculated rather than genuine. His family's expressions showed growing recognition that they had been deceived as thoroughly as his pregnant wife. Financial documents revealed Glenn's preparation for abandoning his family while protecting his assets, secret accounts and property transfers that proved his betrayal had been planned with cold calculation rather than emotional impulse. The methodical nature of his deception made it impossible for family members to excuse his behavior as temporary madness or midlife crisis. "Your son has been systematically preparing to divorce his pregnant wife while hiding community assets," Austin explained with prosecutorial precision. "These documents show deliberate fraud designed to leave Mrs. Smith financially vulnerable while protecting his wealth during divorce proceedings." Glenn's cousin Daniel, who had always looked up to him as successful role model, shook his head in disbelief as he processed the evidence of systematic betrayal and financial manipulation. The hero worship in his eyes died as he realized that Glenn's success had been built on lies and selfishness rather than integrity and hard work. The apartment hunting photographs appeared last, showing Glenn and Haley leaving together a luxury complex with expressions of hopeful anticipation that made the room gasp in collective horror. The implication that Glenn was planning to establish a home with his mistress while abandoning his pregnant wife created the most devastating blow yet delivered to his crumbling reputation. "While his wife carries his child," Austin announced with barely controlled anger, "your son has been apartment hunting with his mistress, planning to establish a home with her." These photographs were taken at a luxury complex where they discussed future living arrangements together. Glenn's mother collapsed back into her chair as if physically struck, the revelation that her son was planning to replace his pregnant wife and unborn grandchild with younger substitutes proving too shocking to process immediately. Her tears turned to wails of grief as she mourned the son she thought she knew while confronting the stranger he had become. Glenn's world lay in ruins around him, every relationship destroyed by evidence of his systematic betrayal and cold-blooded planning. His family's love had turned to disgust, their respect transformed into revulsion, their support withdrawn as they processed the magnitude of his deception and cruelty toward the pregnant woman they had welcomed as daughter. Yet even as Glenn's reputation burned to ashes before his eyes, Chloe knew that the true reckoning was only beginning, justice demanding more than mere exposure of his crimes against their marriage and family. Chapter 10. New Beginnings. Love rebuilt from ashes burns brighter than flames that never knew destruction, and Chloe discovered that happiness earned through survival tastes sweeter than joy that was never tested by betrayal's bitter poison. The nursery gleamed with soft afternoon light, filtering through curtains Chloe had chosen without Glenn's input. Sage-green walls creating the peaceful sanctuary she had envisioned during those painful planning sessions when her marriage was crumbling around her. Her daughter slept peacefully in the crib Austin had assembled with tender care, tiny fingers curled around blankets embroidered with love letters Chloe had stitched during long recovery nights. Emma Rose Smith, she had kept Glenn's surname for her daughter's sake, was everything Chloe had dreamed about during pregnancy's darkest moments. Perfect health, bright eyes that seemed to recognize her mother's voice, and the contentment that comes from being truly wanted and cherished. The birth had been difficult but triumphant, Austin holding Chloe's hand through contractions while Glenn remained conspicuously absent from the most important moment of their child's life. The divorce proceedings had been swift and decisive, Glenn's documented betrayal making court decisions straightforward for judges who had seen too many similar cases. His family's testimony supporting Chloe rather than their own son had been unprecedented in Austin's experience, their moral outrage at Glenn's behavior creating legal advantages that ensured maximum settlement and custody protection. Glenn's real estate empire had been divided with surgical precision, Chloe receiving compensation that would secure her daughter's future while allowing her to rebuild her interior design business according to her own vision. The house they had shared became hers completely, transformed from scene of betrayal into sanctuary of new beginnings where painful memories were painted over with hope. Austin's presence in their lives had evolved naturally from professional necessity into personal devotion that felt destined rather than convenient. His love for Chloe had grown slowly, respectfully, built upon admiration for her strength and recognition of her worth rather than rescue fantasies or rebound attraction. When he finally confessed his feelings, Chloe was ready to receive them with heart healed enough to trust again. Their relationship progressed with the patience of people who understood love's fragility and value, Austin never pushing for commitment while consistently demonstrating reliability that rebuilt Chloe's faith in masculine devotion. He loved Emma as if she were his own daughter, attending doctor appointments and midnight feedings with dedication that made fatherhood seem like privilege rather than burden. The legal community had watched their romance with interest and approval, colleagues recognizing genuine affection between attorney and client that transcended professional boundaries appropriately. Austin's reputation had been enhanced rather than damaged by his relationship with Chloe, their love story representing the kind of happy ending that made his difficult career feel worthwhile. Glenn's downfall had been complete and public, his betrayal becoming cautionary tale among their social circle while his business partnerships dissolved under the weight of lost trust and damaged reputation. Haley had abandoned him immediately when his financial situation became precarious, her true motives exposed as his usefulness evaporated. He had lost everything that mattered while gaining nothing that lasted. Michael had dissolved their business partnership with public statements about moral standards and family values, Glenn's former friend choosing loyalty to Chloe over profit considerations. The real estate firm continued thriving under Michael's sole ownership, while Glenn struggled to rebuild professional credibility that might never recover from his spectacular fall from grace. The Smith family had embraced Chloe and Emma completely while cutting Glenn off financially and emotionally, their disappointment in his choices creating permanent rift that left him isolated from support systems he had taken for granted. His parents' love for their daughter-in-law exceeded their tolerance for their son's selfishness, creating family dynamics that favored justice over blood relations. Chloe's interior design business flourished as wealthy clients sought her services specifically because of her story, her survival and success inspiring women who had faced similar betrayals or feared similar situations. Her artistic vision had been sharpened by personal experience, creating homes that truly felt like sanctuaries because she understood what sanctuary meant. Standing in her beautiful kitchen now, preparing dinner for Austin while Emma napped peacefully upstairs, Chloe felt gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. The pain of Glenn's betrayal had been transformative rather than merely destructive, teaching her strength she hadn't known she possessed while clearing space for love she deserved. Austin's key in the front door created the familiar sound of homecoming, his daily return from the office marking transition from work to family that felt natural and right. Emma's delighted squeals from the nursery indicated she had awakened and recognized her beloved stepfather's arrival, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. "How are my girls?" Austin called out as he climbed the stairs to collect Emma for their evening ritual, his voice carrying joy that transformed their house into home with every syllable. The love in his tone was genuine and deep, unmarred by the deception that had once poisoned similar domestic moments. The doorbell's chime interrupted their peaceful domestic scene, its unexpected sound creating momentary tension in Chloe's chest as she wondered who might be calling without appointment or invitation. Austin appeared at the top of the stairs with Emma in his arms, their matching expressions of curiosity making Chloe smile despite her slight anxiety. "Are we expecting anyone?" Austin asked, as he descended with their daughter, Emma's chubby hands reaching toward Chloe with trust and affection that made every sacrifice worthwhile. The sight of them together, her chosen family, filled Chloe with fierce protective love and profound contentment. Chloe moved toward the front door with confidence born from survival and security provided by Austin's unwavering support. Whatever waited on their doorstep couldn't threaten the happiness she had built from the ashes of her destroyed marriage, the love she had chosen to embrace after learning to recognize authentic devotion. Through the peephole, Glenn's face appeared haggard and humble, his once confident bearing replaced by desperate humility that suggested complete defeat and possible redemption. He stood alone on their doorstep, hands empty except for what might have been apology or plea, his appearance suggesting he had lost everything while learning what truly mattered. Austin joined her at the door with Emma still in his arms, their united front representing everything Glenn had abandoned and lost through his selfish choices. Chloe looked up at the man who had rebuilt her world with patience and genuine love, drawing strength from his presence while deciding how to respond to her past's unexpected reappearance. She opened the door slowly, her confidence unshakable as she faced the man who had once held the power to destroy her, but now stood powerless before the life she had created without him. Glenn's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him, Chloe radiant with happiness, Austin strong and protective, and Emma beautiful and thriving in her chosen father's arms. The laughter that bubbled up from Chloe's throat was pure and triumphant, musical with joy that couldn't be diminished by Glenn's presence or damaged by his past betrayals. The sound filled their entryway with celebration of survival, victory and love that had conquered every obstacle placed before it. Her beautiful, powerful laughter echoed through the house as Austin wrapped his arms around his new family, and Glenn realized what he had lost forever.